14 years. That is how long the outgoing and prior generation of Toyota 4Runner stuck around. And because the 4Runner fan base has to be one of the most aggressively loyal fan bases in the entire industry, the last gen still had its fair share of fans right up until its dying breath. But we're all new for 2025 with the 6th generation 4Runner, and with it comes an all new platform, all new powertrain, all new packaging, all new trims, all new. But the question remains, is this a worthy successor for the 4Runner that we have known for so long? Let's talk about it. So we are in the TRD Off-Road trim, which I would consider to be the baseline off-road enthusiast trim that most people, if they're looking to take their 4Runner off-road, are going to try to go with this one. It is not quite as expensive as the TRD Pro, and it's definitely underneath the Trailhunter. Now, in terms of what kind of focus this has when we're talking about off-road capabilities, this is going to be a generalist kind of trim. It's going to be for, camping, fire roads, overlanding. Now, this is not going to have all of the top tier off-road goodies as the TRD Pro and the Trailhunter has, like really aggressive off-road tires, better ground clearance, a higher quality off-road suspension and shocks and all that kind of good stuff. It also does not have the TRD Pro's disconnectable sway bar, but it does kind of have all that a casual off-road enthusiast or occasional off-roader needs. Of course, it has dual range 4-wheel drive. It also has a rear locking differential, crawl control, different off-road drive modes. It's all that you need, really. We are on the medium difficulty course, is what I would call this. Terrain-wise, this is not that much more difficult than what you would find on a traditional fire road out in the desert. However, this is obviously a controlled environment, but they did set up some really aggressive hills for that. They're really testing our angles of approach and angles of departure and breakover angle as well. And in that regard, the 4Runner's doing great. This course is best taken in 4 low for some of the hills. And in that regard, the powertrain, so that is going to be one of the biggest changes from the 5th gen. Now we are dealing with a turbocharged 4-cylinder. Yes, that is a massive departure away from the old 4-liter naturally aspirated V6. Actually, not only does the 4Runner come standard with a turbocharged 4-cylinder, but this specific 4Runner that we are in right now is the iForce Max hybrid turbocharged 4-cylinder. Yes, so the 4Runner community has been quite vocal about which side of the fence they fall on. A lot of enthusiasts of 4Runners did acknowledge the fact that the old engine was thirsty and a bit archaic, but honestly, it was settled science by 4 years into the production run. I mean, reliability and robustness were 2 of the biggest characteristics with that powertrain, especially with that 5-speed automatic transmission that might as well have been cut from granite. Power-wise, it's quite good. I've yet to take it out on the road, which we'll get to later on a different trim, of course, but a lot of these hills necessitate some low-end torque, and I extensively drove the 4Runner without the 4Runner TRD Off-Road without the hybrid system, and it did excellent out here. Plenty of low-down grunt. We multiple times stopped dead on a very steep hill and just got into it, and it went up no problem. The hybrid, same thing there. Honestly, I've not done anything that requires any more or less power than the standard non-hybrid turbo, so I'm still just operating on that. But no, so far it's great. And of course, the added bonus of either the normal 4-cylinder or the 4-cylinder hybrid, you're going to get way better fuel economy than the 4-liter. Body motions are controlled quite well off-road with jostling. It's nice. Really, personally speaking, for what I would use a off-roadish SUV for, which is just active lifestyle stuff, hiking, camping, going outdoors and adventures, this is probably the trim that I would pick. Unless you really get out there and you are really wheeling, the TRD Off-Road is more than you're probably ever going to need. I will say, note, the off-road camera system is quite clever. Settings that we are in right now makes it so that the front-mounted camera and the side-mounted cameras trigger automatically at low speeds, which give you a really great view of the trail and obstacles and everything like that. And as hokey as that sounds, and or gimmicky as that sounds, it makes a big difference when you're coming over a very steep blind crest. you can see what is on the other side without worrying. So you can kind of modulate your speed as necessary. And like I said, it's kind of automatic, so when you go above a certain speed, it turns off, which makes sense, and then it just it comes back when you're at low speed. But yeah, as you see now, we're going over some fairly aggressive kind of potholey situation here in the road, and no problem with the body control. We are going to do more crazy off-road stuff with the more crazy off-road trims. Don't you worry. Woo. All right, welcome to the 4Runner Trailhunter. This, well, it's a little confusing, but it's best versus the TRD Pro. Whoa. See, we're already in some rocky stuff. And that should hint at what the Trailhunter is all about. It's because they are putting the different 4Runner off-road trims in the respective environments in which they are best suited for. So, the Trailhunter shares kind of the top dog space with the TRD Pro. However, where the TRD Pro focuses on kind of higher speed, deserty environments, you know, I would not call it like a Raptor competitor, but I'm just saying it's definitely a higher speed with those Fox shocks that come on the TRD Pro. The Trailhunter is absolutely focused on more technical environments like we are on right now. This is still a controlled environment, again, but it is like, look at this. Oh, a little stuck, little articulation here. Take it easy. See, we didn't quite have to engage the Trailhunter's disconnecting sway bar and the rear locking differential, but we almost had to do that for a second. But yes, Trailhunter, as I said, is, well, it hunts trails. It's more focused on technical stuff, the rocky stuff, the when there's more articulation involved, when you're more lower speed than high speed. Aha. Well, not quite yet. I'm just waiting for when it gets stuck and I have to lock that rear diff, but nothing so far. And this has rock rails, which are nice, some sliders. All the underbody is protected. The diffs, the transmission, underneath the engine, the gas tank, it's all protected with the skid plates. You've got Trailhunter specific wheels and tires, and you've got Old Man Emu shocks. That's pretty cool. Now I am driving the Trailhunter directly after driving the TRD Off-Road, so this is going to be kind of my comparison here in terms of feel. The course is a whole lot different than that medium low speed, medium challenge course we did in the TRD Off-Road. Body motions are excellently managed here in the Trailhunter. The ride quality is fantastic over on the off-road, which, you know, for some that really doesn't matter, but it makes a big difference. Now this is the hybrid, so this has the full 465 foot-pounds of torque. That is pretty beefy. And we're having no power issues out here, obviously. We're in 4 low at the moment because this is a course that they said is best taken at around walking pace. And again, we're not really challenging the Trailhunter. An experienced off-roader could take the TRD Off-Road trim on this trail. Tires might be a little bit of an issue, but in terms of clearance and capability, I don't think that the TRD Off-Road would have too much trouble here. But this is a good demonstrator of what the Trailhunter is kind of geared for. I think the separation of the TRD Pro, like I said, kind of geared towards the more deserty, faster environments, and the Trailhunter give a really great baseline for the off-road enthusiast. Is this top trim 4Runner as capable as the top trim of the last generation 4Runner? Yes, if not more so. Again, I haven't really pushed either of the generations to their extreme limit, but I can kind of just tell based on hardware and just pure dimension capabilities and torque and all that good jazz and modes and everything. Yes, I do think that people are going to be quite happy with the top level trims. I really do like what they have done separating the more fast environment TRD TRD Pro. It's not really super fast, but it's kind of good for, you know, not crawling like this, even though it would do just fine out here, I would imagine. The Trailhunter, it's great that Toyota's given enthusiasts their choice, okay? You can go either direction. So now that I'm driving the new 4Runner out on paved normal road, there are a few key areas that I want to evaluate this when compared to both the old 4Runner and its competition. So the prior generation of 4Runner was never really known, or was kind of often criticized for its rather antiquated platform with regards to on-road comfort and kind of refinement. Of course, that's not what people buy or bought 4Runners for. That was never really the purpose of the vehicle. Most of the time, 4Runners are purchased for the badge, the style, the capability, and the utility. But it does bear pointing out that the prior generation was not the nicest to drive on a daily basis, even if you went higher up in the trims and kind of kitted it out. That's especially true when you look at the feature set. I am currently driving the 2025 4Runner Platinum, which, while not the most expensive 4Runner you can buy, is definitely one of the most kitted out, high spec, nicest, most refined trim in the lineup. For something that is semi-off-road focused but very capable, is a light years leap away from the prior generation, any of the prior generations. The powertrain is especially more refined. I'm really digging the extra torque in this specific, the hybrid powertrain here. With regards to passing and overtaking, it's really not that quick, but it's totally fine. Keeping in mind what this is, what it represents, ride quality is pretty great, body motions are pretty nice, it's quiet, relatively quiet in here. There's a little bit of four-cylinder grumble, but it's not too bad. So overall, I know those watching probably care more about how this is off-road and the cooler trims than the standard, than this bougie platinum trim, but I will say it is pretty great. If you were holding out on the prior generation of 4Runner of any trim because it was just a little bit too rough around the edges for you, both from a material, mechanical, and just kind of refinement perspective, now's your time to jump in, I would say. The materials in this loaded platinum, pretty nice. They got leather wrapped steering wheel, we've got leather upholstery that's nice, like dark, like navy blue with some stitching. We've got some trim specific, trim and accents in the interior. We got wireless charging. We got a huge centered infotainment display that's bigger than 14 inches. We've got a digital display here. Really nice touches throughout the cabin. JBL sound system, heated second row seats, heated and ventilated up front. It's a pretty nice place to spend your time and doesn't not feel worth the $65,000 buy-in for this. One thing I really do like about the 4Runner in general, which also extends to the Tacoma, because remember, this is basically a Tacoma SUV, is the wide availability or wide presence on the interior of hard buttons and toggles. So nice to see that again. We got big old fat knobs for the air conditioning. We got a big old fat knob center for the volume control. We got buttons everywhere on the steering wheel, hard buttons. It's lovely. So far, so great, but we have got to talk about pricing and competition. As expected, moving up the 4Runner trim ladder can become quite the pricey endeavor, and there is some alarming overlap with other semi-equivalent off-road Toyota SUVs. Now, for the most part, there is no concern if you stick to the TRD Off-Road trim and under, as the ladder is starting around $51,000. The next jump is to the TRD Off-Road Premium, an equipment package that pushes it right above $55,000. Now, that is roughly $3,000 short of the Land Cruiser 1958, which is still very close dimensionally and when it comes to off-road chops. Yeah, the lines get even blurrier if you jump to the 4Runner TRD Pro and Trailhunter, each starting at $68,350, some $4-ish grand more than the mid-level Land Cruiser and almost $12,000 more than the last-gen 4Runner TRD Pro. But for those seeking more of a balance of on-road refinement, the $65,000 4Runner Platinum matches both the mid-level Land Cruiser and some lower trims of the Land Cruiser-based Lexus GX 550. And speaking of that, the nicer, more powerful, refined, and equipped GX 550 Overtrail, which is the GX's most off-road focused trim, barely scoots ahead of all this at $73,000. Make it make sense. Now, this is long before we even get to the Jeep Wrangler and Ford Bronco, both of which can be very well equipped for under $60,000, including the Wrangler Ultimate's Rubicon trim and the Bronco 4-Doors Badlands and Everglades trim. Of course, the 4Runner is going to be more refined and probably slightly less capable than these dedicated off-roaders, but you better be willing to pay out the nose if you're a Toyota diehard. But overall, big takeaway, so much more refined than the last generation. And if you've been holding out because of that, now's your time to jump in. I think that no matter what type of Toyota 4Runner enthusiast you are going to get a huge kick out of the all-new 6th generation SUV. I think from a refinement, capability, packaging, equipment, efficiency perspective, it's not even close. It's a moonshot away from the old SUV. Now, I do know there are still probably some concerns from the 4Runner community regarding the long-term reliability and serviceability of the new turbocharged 4-cylinder, hybrid or otherwise. And I gotta say, I can't speak for any sort of future reliability or anything like that, but if you're holding out in hope, they are never gonna make another naturally aspirated V6 4Runner. So either you keep your rickety old 4Runner or you upgrade. My vote, honestly, you gotta upgrade. The potential hypothetical downsides are absolutely outweighed by the benefits and the new refinement and capability of this platform. But that's just my opinion. And for my full thoughts and reviews, you gotta go to Cars.com/news.